In this video, we're going to be going over how to set up glowing textures inside of Modo. So first, let's take a look at the character that we're dealing with. So this is the villain character Fright Train from the game Sentinels of Freedom. It's a game that we worked on a little bit ago. It's released multi-platform, so it's on Steam, Nintendo Switch, and then it's going to be on Xbox and PlayStation as well. So mesh-wise, we're looking at 13,350 tries. He's fairly optimized, and then underneath, say, his head, there's really not a character under there. It's just he always has his helmet on. So let's look at the textures real quick. So we're going to be using 2K textures, so 2048 by 2048. So let's turn on the diffuse. So with this one, you can see that all these darker gray areas, it's kind of like a cast iron. He's got some pants. And then these you can think of as potentially more leather with, again, more iron on there. Let's look at the normal map real quick. Let's turn that on. Let's actually turn the diffuse off so we can see what's going on here. And I'll turn off the wireframe. So if we look at this, kind of the metal, this looks like a hammered metal almost. So if we turn the normal off and turn it on, you can kind of see where that's getting effect. Other thing would be kind of details and wrinkles in the pants. Just a handful of things to make it look a little bit better. Same thing, seams in the gloves. There's just a few smaller details on here to make it read a little bit better. And again, these characters are going to be roughly this big on scene. So this is kind of what we're focusing on as far as details and size of everything goes when we initially made this character. So what we effectively want to do is, in these little vents, we want to make it to where we have the option of making these glow. So again, this is the feel of this character's, again, these little areas down here as well. The feel of this character is he's kind of almost based on like a locomotive. So this would give the representation of this glowing like there's fire inside of him or something like that, just to give it a little bit of visual interest. So what we did was we created a third texture that would go on him that looks something like this. So let's apply this to him and then we'll look at the UVs so you can see what's going on. There we go. So at this point, you can see that the areas in here are kind of fully colored in, the outside being a little bit more orange, the inside being a little bit more of like a hotter yellow. And then we just gave, as kind of like a cheat to make it feel like the rest of it's glowing or it's potentially warm, was we did a little bit on this outside area. So again, same thing here. We have the intense burning area right here, and then the little extra area coming out. And same thing down here. So where Modo differs from an actual game engine is, again, Modo's not a real-time game engine. We want to hit the render button. We're going to render something out. So again, when something's rendered, it's no longer real-time. And we want it to make it feel like a game engine. So again, we're going to be setting this up kind of similar, but a little bit different than you would in a game engine. But all of the basic concepts should transfer. So the first thing would be this glow map. Depending on your settings in your game engine, it might be a glow map like this where everything's all white and then you pick the color in the game engine. So you could say that this could glow any color you want, and that would just be kind of a dynamic slider you could change to whatever color. Or it would be a colored glow map like this, to where again, black equals not glowing, colored equals glowing in that color. So again, for the Modo example, we're going to go ahead and just use the colored one. So let's take a look at what's going on with our materials. So we have this glow just set to a diffuse right now, and that's just so you guys could see what it looked like when it was applied. And then we have our diffuse map and our normal map. So we'll just leave the diffuse and the normal on. We'll have this glow initially off. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go down to the material, and let's actually jump right in the render tab and kind of get situated with our render. And again, I can see where my camera's moving around. I have a direct light on him. And right now his skin and everything, just the specular value. So let's just go to, oops, reorder those. Go to the material settings. Its roughness is set to 40, its Fresnel is set to 100, and the specular is set to 4. Again, I'm not really going to worry about tweaking those to make them perfect. We'll just leave them at those defaults for now. So effectively, what we're going to do is we're going to make our material glow. And then what we're going to do is almost use this map as a map that says black equals not glowing and just kind of ignore that as far as the glowing, and then the orange equals glowing. So it'll effectively make it to where our diffuse and our normal map kind of shows through where it's black, and then it kind of won't show through because it'll be glowing where it is. So let's set this up real quick. We'll turn that glow off. Go to our material and go to material trans for transparency, even though we're not dealing with transparency. It's just kind of a weird little quirk. We have this little luminosity tab. So let's change that luminosity amount to something like 1, hit enter and see what happens. So now he is fully glowing. So now what we do is we have this little glow map, so let's turn that on. Effectively, when it's on, nothing will really happen. So what we have to do is we have to change its effector right here. So it's currently set to diffuse color, and that was just so you guys again could see it. So I'm going to go to diffuse color, go to basic channels, and then I'm going to do luminous color right here. Click on that. So now what happens is you can see we have our character is effectively back to normal, except for these areas are glowing. So let's add one thing to this scene so we can kind of see what's going on a little bit better. I'm just going to throw a box in the scene, and we'll give this box a new material, just call it 1. Because I just don't want it glowing at this point or sharing any textures. Now what I'm going to do is effectively just think of this as a big door that we're making. Go back to our render tab, hit play. Now we're just going to move the camera over. So here I'm in the perspective tab so I can move around and nothing bad will happen. So let's make this a little bit taller, a little bit wider, and now let's move it towards him a little bit. So you can see the color that's glowing from his mask is actually affecting the environment. So it's actually glowing. It's not just showing up as an intense saturated color in a sense. So this is a really, really quick way that you can set up a glow map scenario. So again, just the steps reviewing really quick. Go to your material, go to material trans, and set this luminous intensity. It starts at 0, so set it to like 1. If you set it something really high, like 100 for example, it's just going to make your asset glow even more. Let's just pump that back down to 1. And again, over here you have your glow texture in a sense. This is set to luminous color. That is found under basic channels. So basic channels, luminous color right here. And then you have your diffuse and your normal maps in there. And then these could be referred to as a glow map. They might be referred to as an emission or an emissive map. It kind of depends on the environment and the group of people you're working with, because they all are effectively the same thing. Their job is to make your asset glow in the parts where you want it to glow. And additionally, the intent of the glow map isn't for this to be a new light source in most cases. It's more of just demonstrating that this area can and is glowing. If you were going to have it be more of a light source, what you'd do would be on this character's rig, for example, you could attach a light to him. There's a bunch of different ways you could handle it, but just know that that changes from game engine to game engine. And one last thing is just a little bonus I'll show you. So it has to do with the render settings. So let's go ahead, we have this in our scene, we're just going to render it out. Again, these are all default settings, so shadows are going to look a little bit bad and whatnot. But regardless, on this image processing tab, we have this little checkbox here called bloom, and this is going to be kind of a post-processing thing it'll add. So let's click that, and most likely you're not going to see a difference. It just depends on a few settings. So that's going to be these two settings down here. So this bloom threshold is how close to white is the thing that's glowing. Because again, if we had something that was closer to a hot color, so closer to white, it's going to be more apt to have that bloom effect or that extra glow effect. So what we're going to do is we're going to lower this bloom threshold because again, this isn't the brightest color of orange in a sense. So let's maybe drop that down to like, start at 60%, hit enter and see what happens. So right away you can see now we're starting to get some glow around here. So again, the more I drop this, the more lighter colors are going to glow. So again, if you drop it down too far, you might have unintended things like the highlights on his arms might start glowing and stuff. We'll leave that at about 50%. So we also have this bloom radius, so that's how far out the glow happens. So it's set to 2, let's double it to 4. You can see that kind of pops out. So again, this is bloom off. And then when we turn bloom on, it just gives it that cool extra glow effect that you can add to your renders. So hopefully this video helped you out with setting up a scene where you needed an element of your model to glow.